All right, so in today's video, we're going to take a look at the layout that runs at Pendulum Station. And today's kind of a bittersweet day, since this is the last time this layout will be running before we start dismantling everything tomorrow. And not permanently. My wife and I have actually started designing a new layout on the computer. And once we work out some kinks and obviously try to salvage as much as possible from this layout, then work on the new layout will begin almost as soon as this one has been taken down. But before doing that, I want to kind of show you what we're able to accomplish as, modelers that have only been in this hobby for a few years, and what you can do if you have a limited amount of space. So this is just a 12-foot switching slash puzzle layout. And although it looks fairly simple, there's quite a lot more going on than meets the eye. So for example, if we take a look at the platform here on the right-hand side, we've got some cool station lights running across the top, and those look great when you run those at night. Underneath the platform, we have a Gauge Master, sound control system. If we look at the signal box down there left, there's another Gauge Master speaker, and at the very end of the layout, we have an NCE DCC power cab that's hooked up through a control box to a Raspberry Pi that's installed with JMRI, which allows the trains on the two main lines up here to run almost autonomously. And I bring that up because a lot of people kind of, especially if you're new to the hobby, will shy away from shelf layouts because they can't watch the trains run like you might on a traditional 4x8 board or something like that. But actually, if you spend a little time doing a little bit of research, it's really easy to hook up JMRI, get the trains running automatically. And that really kind of made operating sessions for me much more enjoyable, since when I was using the branch lines down below, running locomotives manually on this track down here, I always had to be aware of the time schedule running up on the main line, since if I came up there and another train started coming down, there was always a risk of an accident with some rather expensive models. So you kind of had to keep it as realistic as possible. So if I bring the camera down here, even though it's a small layout, you can see you can get some pretty excellent shots. So I had some pretty cool Instagram shots with different locomotives that would pull up to this track here, and this is pretty easy to do. You can look at the buffer stop at the end of the track, and it looks like we've got some old iron here, and I'm not an artist by any means. I just, would print off a picture and use some basic acrylic paints and try to copy it. And, you don't tend to see these buffers around too much these days in the UK, but came up pretty good, I think. And then we have an engine shed, something you probably would have seen during the steam era. This is by a company called, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this correctly, but Matt Calf, one of the two. And they're just great kits. They're really easy to build. It's a pretty enjoyable process, and the result from what is essentially just cardstock is pretty great. I mean, look at that. You got some basic weathering going on up there, and that was just with like a $2 water paint kit that I picked up from the kids section in Target, so not too shabby. We go ahead and take a look down here. The station is it's a little bit unusual, since it's a mix between era 7, steam era, and an identity crisis. And that's probably because I wanted a little bit of everything. I kind of was going for Great Western, a little bit what you might find at Crew, and then with the retaining walls in the background, there's a train station in London, I think, called North Dulwich, if I remember correctly. I'm probably totally chopping up that name, but in any case, the way that the station looks is there's retaining walls on each side of the tracks, and I thought it looked kind of cool, and so I wanted to imitate that on my layout. On the right hand side here, we've got some British Rail trains, and we've got this sort of walk bridge here in the center, and I think that was a Pico kit. No, it was an Airfix. It was an old Airfix kit that I found on eBay for $10 and airbrushed, Great Western green. Even though I don't have any Great Western trains on here, it looked cool. I wanted one, so I had one. And we'll take a look down here. We've got the signal box, and you've probably seen this on some of my other videos. But again, you've got a Gauge Master speaker running underneath there. So when I go to power up the layout in a second, it's pretty loud, but it really brings some life to the layout. And looks like one of the kids back here is fallen down. And I try to put as much detail as I possibly could on the station Just because you have little cameos. So you've got this lady here is dropping off some mail, and I think in the actual kit she's holding a clipboard, but I thought, nobody can really tell. Looks close enough to mail. We'll look over here, and if you remember in one of my earlier videos, I kind of made fun with Macbeth lines of this guy staring desperately into an image in the background, into a poster. All right, so if we walk further down here, this is where it gets a little squirrely. So I had initially designed the layout as an American layout first, and I made modifications later. In fact, if we just go ahead and pull back here, let's take the camera up. It doesn't look terrible, but I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and you just wouldn't find something like this in the United Kingdom. So you've got these two odd branch lines coming off here on the left-hand side that goes into a goods yard that I'll show you in a second. And it doesn't look bad. It doesn't look horrible, but it bothers me. And I do want to eventually take my layouts to shows and kind of represent British trains here in California. And I don't know. I feel like we can do better. And I posted on some model rail groups on Facebook, and they all kind of said, yeah, it's not bad, but it's not prototypical. And it's kind of like realistically wrong, and so to make the modifications required to bring it up to a prototypical state, it's just easier to start over anew. So let's go ahead and move these guys out of the way. Down you go. I had at some point wanted to put a scaffolding over here from Model. There's a company called Model Scale Scenes, Model Railway Scenes, something like that. But I want to put a little scaffolding up there to make it look like it was being worked on. And you can see here, this was my first time using static grass, and I think it came out pretty decent. There's a giant gap, which is when I had built the underboards and put the pink foam blocks on top before connecting them together, and they had already glued down, and I don't know, looks pretty terrible, although I do a good job of hiding it in the videos. And there's not a whole lot of light down this end of the layout, so it might get a little speckly. But the way that my switches work is they're all manual. So I've got some I didn't want motors on my layout since, I just didn't want to have to deal with replacing those when they went bad. So there's a green LED when the switch is in its typical position, and when it's engaged, it changes orange to just keep me, just a reminder for me to let me know that the switch is engaged, because all of the frogs on my layout are powered. And so if I don't turn those off and a train comes up, it causes a short, and that's never a good thing. So let's go ahead and take a look over here. So this is kind of one of my favorite sections of the layout, since I love the crossing signals that you'll find in the UK. And so I managed to find these from some Chinese company on eBay, and although it wasn't painted prototypically, I went in there and made some modifications, and I showed that in another video, and it looks really cool. I'll show you in just a second. I'm going to go ahead and power everything up. But here, I think my goal was to make a Royal Mail section, but I mean, I don't think they ever would have delivered mail this way. It was probably done on a platform, and the next layout will reflect that. And then finally, this was the very first thing, excuse me with the camera here, let's get this box out of the way. This was actually the first thing that I purchased, because again, this is an American barrel factory, who knows, from the 1920s or something, and everything was going to be kind of built around this industry area. And at the last minute, obviously, I made a quick decision change, and I found this, this days gone by 00 scale truck that had barrels on it, and tried to blend in, this factory on the layout. And again, it didn't come out too bad, but it still bothers me. So let's go ahead and power this up here. I'm going to bring the camera down below. You'll probably hear some noise in the background. So you can see here's the Raspberry Pi running underneath the layout, and it's hooked up again to my NCE power cab. And then once that boots up, everything kind of starts to light up here. Pull the camera back. Sorry if that's making you dizzy. There we go. And so we can see we've got the crossing signals. And does anybody recognize where this car is from? Not prototypical, but I had to have that on the layout. So let's go back down to where it's a little bit more light. Kind of follow the layout down here, and you can see how the switches on the layout work. So if I push and pull this, orange means that it's engaged, and green is back to the home position. I'm going to stay quiet for a second so you can hear some of the sound effects running in the background. I love hearing that guy blab away. All right. So that's pretty much it. And again, what kind of made this fun and something to keep in mind if you're looking into getting the hobbies. Again, it's a 12-foot layout, and these up here, the trains up on this main line would always run back and forth automatically. My kids love to watch it. And I ran everything in manual down on the lower lines. It would occasionally come up and then come back down again if I needed to switch between these two tracks here. And it was pretty exciting. It worked good. So let me go ahead and just shut down the layout for just a second here. That's a little bit loud. So yeah, so we'll get started on the new layout probably as early as next week, and it'll be a few weeks before we're back up and running again. But hopefully you enjoyed this. Hopefully you got some ideas from it. Maybe it's encouraged you to start your own. I'm not really sure, but let me go ahead and just pop the camera back in there. There we go. That's a little bit better. And yeah, that's it. So that's Pendulum Station. So if you're curious about how some of this was set up, or if you're interested in putting Jam or I on your own layout, let me know in the comments below, and I'll be happy to show you and a tutorial how I had everything set up. But you've seen Pendulum Station. Thanks so much for watching. I'll be gone for a couple months while we work on the new layout, and hopefully we'll have something a bit more prototypical and something that I'll use for decades to come. So thanks so much for watching this video. Hope to see you on the next one. Bye bye.